I always thought the worst betrayals came with shouting, slammed doors, or at least the courtesy of raised voices. But the night everything changed, my mother didn't even blink. She simply set her napkin down, looked straight at me across the table, and said, "We moved your college savings for your sister's procedures." No apology. No hesitation. Just a statement, cold, practiced, final. Across from her, my sister Elena lifted her glass with a soft smile, the kind you give a child who's too young to understand grown-up decisions. My father stared hard at his plate, rearranging utensils like he hoped they'd shield him from what was happening. The room didn't spin, but something inside me did. Quietly. Sharply. Almost elegantly. And instead of crying or asking why, I set my water down and answered with a single word that sliced through the air like a blade. Return it. For a moment, the whole table froze. Not a breath. Not a twitch. Even the chandelier above us seemed to hum with tension. That was the instant, right there, when every buried lie, every unspoken favoritism, every time I'd been asked to understand suddenly cracked open. But before I take you deeper into how everything unraveled, you should know who I am. My name is Camila. And for years, I believed our quiet cul-de-sac was the kind of place where families protected each other. Manicured lawns, neighbors who baked during holidays, a sense of stability that wrapped around me like a warm blanket. Except, blankets can smother you too, if you never notice they're too tight. Elena was 10 years older, the family's pride piece. Her photos lined the hallway, trophies arranged like exhibits. Every plan, every budget, every priority leaned toward her needs first. I wasn't neglected, not in the obvious ways. I was just background. The supporting character. The flexible daughter. The one who could always wait her turn. My college fund was the single thing my parents had promised belonged only to me. They talked about it like a sacred box they guarded for my future. I held on to that belief through high school, through part-time jobs, through the hope that one day I'd finally step into a version of myself that didn't have to shrink to fit their expectations. But that night, one sentence proved how easily they'd rewritten my future without telling me. And the part that hurt wasn't even the money, it was how natural it seemed for them. Before we continue the story, tell me your name and where you're watching from. And please like the video and subscribe for more stories like this. Because what I discovered the next morning didn't just confirm their betrayal, it revealed something far worse hiding under my name. The morning after that dinner, I woke with a numbness that felt heavier than anger. I wanted to believe I misunderstood, that my mom exaggerated, that maybe there was still something left in that account. Families mess up, right? Maybe this was one of those mistakes you talk through later, after tempers settle. But the pit in my stomach said otherwise. During lunch at work, I opened my bank app. I remember holding my breath without realizing it. The moment the page loaded, my heart dropped so hard it felt physical. Balance, 0.00. Not low. Not reduced. Empty. Gone. But there was something worse, something so jarring I actually refreshed the page twice. A sharp hit to my credit score. Beneath it, a line I'd never seen before. A loan opened in my name. A loan I never applied for. A loan I never signed. My fingers went cold. The entire world around me seemed to blur as I stared at that screen. Someone used my information, my identity, confidently, silently, like they knew I would never check. Or worse, that I would check and stay quiet. I sat there for a full minute, unable to even blink. The betrayal wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It wasn't a single misstep. It was deliberate. Coordinated. Hidden. That evening, I gathered my courage and approached my mom in the kitchen. She was folding dish towels, humming softly as though her world was utterly unaffected by the one she shattered. "Mom," I said carefully, "did you or Dad take out anything in my name?" She didn't even look fully at me. "Cammy, don't start this. You're blowing things out of proportion. We did what we had to do." "For Elena?" I asked, my voice tight. Her tone sharpened. She's been trying for years. This is her chance to have a family. You're young. You'll understand when you're older. There it was again. That rehearsed line. That entitlement packaged as wisdom. Just as I was about to respond, Elena walked into the kitchen with a mug in her hand, another prop in the performance. Oh, please, she scoffed. You're acting like they stole your life. You can rebuild. Some things matter more than your plans. It wasn't only what she said. It was how she said it. As if my future was spare change she could grab whenever she needed it. That was the moment everything inside me shifted. Quietly. Permanently. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't an accident. It was a pattern, one they expected me to accept forever. So I made a decision that night. A quiet one. A necessary one. If they thought I wouldn't fight for what was mine, they didn't know me at all. Because once I started digging into the documents, what I uncovered proved this betrayal ran far deeper than I imagined. The next few days felt like I was drifting through thick fog, living, functioning, speaking, but never fully present. At work, I answered emails I didn't remember typing. I sat in meetings while my mind replayed the same numbers. 0.00. Loan opened. Credit score drop. It didn't matter how many times I blinked, the truth remained solid and cold. By Thursday evening, I couldn't pretend anymore. I cleared off the small table in my apartment and laid everything out, all my remaining pay stubs, bank statements, the notification about the mysterious loan, and months of transactions I'd never authorized. What I found made something inside me hollow out. The withdrawals from my college account weren't random. They were systematic. Structured. An organized drain. Elena's treatments were expensive, more than the vague support my mom mentioned. And each payment lined up perfectly with the dates the money disappeared from my savings. The deeper I dug, the more intentional it all became. At one point, I opened a digital document and froze. My name was on a cosigner line. A signature box was marked as approved. But I had never touched it. My stomach twisted. Someone with access to my personal documents. Someone who handled our family mail. Someone who kept track of important papers had filled in my information. Memories surfaced like ghosts. Mom asking for my social security card for tax purposes. Dad collecting my old bills to shred them safely. Elena borrowing the mail key just for a day. Piece by piece, it all formed one impossible-to-ignore picture. This wasn't a single betrayal. It was a structure built on the assumption that I wouldn't notice, or wouldn't resist. I stepped outside into the cool night air because my apartment suddenly felt too small to hold the weight of everything I now knew. The city lights blurred as I walked, each step steadying me a little more. The next morning, I took the evidence to my coworker and closest friend, Jade. She looked at the papers, then at me, horror clouding her face. Camila, this isn't an accident. Someone used your identity. I know, I said quietly. You have to stop them. I will. And in that moment, that fog I'd been trapped in finally began to lift. Shock turned into clarity. Clarity into resolve. Resolve into a plan. That evening, I drove to my parents' house. Mom was folding towels again, always performing serenity. Elena lounged on the couch, scrolling like she owned the air around her. I placed a folder on the coffee table. Mom glanced up. What's this? Proof, I said. Of everything I didn't agree to. For the first time in a long time, they didn't have immediate excuses. I'm done letting this slide, I said. If you want to talk about this, meet me at the clinic tomorrow. All of you. Elena frowned. Why the clinic? Because it's time you heard the truth from someone you can't manipulate. Tomorrow's meeting wasn't just a confrontation, it became the moment every lie finally cracked open. The sky the next afternoon looked heavy enough to fall, gray, muted, stretched thin like it was holding its breath along with me. I parked outside the clinic early, hands resting on the steering wheel as I watched the minutes crawl forward. My family arrived exactly how I expected. Elena stepped out of her car first, wrapped in a beige coat that matched her practiced confidence. She always dressed like life was an audience she needed to impress. Her husband, Aaron, trailed behind, eyes low, posture tense. Mom and Dad came last, walking side by side but not together. Mom's jaw was tight. Dad's guilt hung on him like an oversized coat. No one greeted me. No one asked why we were here. They simply followed, silent and stiff, into the waiting area. A receptionist guided us to a small consultation room, round table, soft lamp, modest chairs, too calm for the storm coming. Elena sank into a seat with a sigh of annoyance. "I still don't see the point of dragging us here," she muttered. "You will," I said, taking the chair across from her. My voice surprised me. It was steady, clear, almost too calm for the war inside me. Mom leaned forward. "Camila, if this is another guilt trip." "It's not about guilt," I said. "It's about truth." Before she could respond, the door opened and Dr. Rena Malik entered. A composed woman in her early 50s, gentle-eyed but authoritative enough that the room subtly straightened around her. Elena instantly adjusted her posture, smoothing her hair like she was about to receive a glowing performance review. "Thank you for coming," Dr. Malik said, sitting with a professional warmth. "My understanding is there's confusion regarding the treatments and the decisions made this past year." "Confusion is a generous word," I murmured. Elena folded her hands delicately, slipping into her most charming version of herself. "Yes, there seems to be some family misunderstanding. I've tried explaining." Dr. Malik cut in gently but firmly. "Then let's discuss the facts." I watched Elena's composure sharpen. She truly believed the doctor would back her, that this would end with everyone apologizing for doubting her. But she didn't know what I'd requested that morning. Not confidential records. Not private test results. Just clarification about decisions Elena made, decisions she herself authorized. The doctor clasped her hands. "Elena, during your initial screenings, we discussed the source of the fertility challenges you and Aaron were facing." Elena stiffened. Aaron's shoulders tensed. Dad's eyes lifted for the first time. "You've known since the beginning," Dr. Malik continued softly, "that your results were normal. The difficulty conceiving isn't yours." The room fell into a sudden, crushing silence. Mom blinked. "I don't understand." Elena opened her mouth, then closed it. Dr. Malik continued, "Elena requested that we frame this situation publicly as her struggle, not Aaron's. She insisted the narrative be hers to control." It felt like the air cracked. My mother turned pale. Aaron looked like he wanted to disappear. And Elena's carefully built composure finally began to crumble. But what came next didn't just expose Elena's lies, it revealed the part my parents played in protecting them. For a moment, no one in that room moved, not even to breathe. Elena's facade shattered in slow motion, like glass cracking from the inside. "That's not," she started, her voice trembling. But Dr. Malik didn't let the moment slip away. Her tone remained gentle, but unyielding. "Elena, you made it clear during your consultations that you didn't want anyone, including your family, to know the truth. You asked us to redirect the emotional narrative toward you." Mom's eyes darted between us, confusion and dawning horror mixing on her face. "Why would you hide something like that?" she whispered. Elena's jaw tightened. "Because it wasn't anyone's business." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "You let them believe your struggle justified draining my future." Elena snapped toward me. "You think this was easy for me? I just wanted a family. We all wanted that." I shook my head. "You wanted a version of the story where you didn't look weak." Elena flinched, not because the words were cruel, but because they were true. Aaron finally spoke, voice cracking under the weight of months of silence. "Elena, you told me you'd handle everything. That you'd tell your parents eventually." She glared at him. You weren't supposed to say anything. I'm tired, he said quietly. Tired of being the villain in a story that isn't mine. Mom pressed both hands to her forehead. We used everything we had, to support you. We wouldn't have done it if we knew. Elena cut her off sharply. Don't pretend you wouldn't have helped anyway. You always said Camila could wait. You practically encouraged it. Mom's face drained as if Elena had punched the air out of her. Dad shifted in his chair, guilt seeping through the cracks of his silence. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the moment truth and accountability collided. I reached into my bag and placed the folder of documents in the center of the table. This is the proof I brought. Payment trails. Bank statements. Screenshots. The loan tied to my name. Dad finally looked directly at me. Camila, we never meant for things to go this far. You didn't think about how far it would go, I replied softly. You didn't think about me at all. The room sagged under the truth. Dr. Malik closed her notebook. Secrets become heavy when they rely on someone else's sacrifice. I took a slow breath. Starting today, any debt with my name on it will be handled legally. Any financial tie between us stops now. Elena scoffed, but it sounded weak, deflated. So you think you're better than us now? You think you're some hero? No, I said, standing. I'm just finally choosing myself. Mom reached out instinctively. Camila, wait. I paused at the door but didn't turn around. You took my future without asking. I'm taking the rest of my life back. I stepped out, letting the door close behind me. But leaving that room wasn't the end, it was the beginning of the fallout none of us could escape. When I stepped out of that clinic, the air felt different, sharper, colder, as if the world itself had shifted. For the first time in years, the silence around me didn't feel like something closing in. It felt like space. Like freedom. But freedom doesn't erase consequences. It only exposes them. Over the next several days, the fallout settled slowly, the way dust drifts after a heavy structure collapses. No screaming matches. No dramatic blow-ups. Just the quiet realization that nothing could go back to the way it had been. The first call came from Elena. I let it ring. She didn't leave a message. The next two were from Mom, her number flashing across my screen like a siren. I ignored both. If she wasn't ready to listen before, she wasn't going to say anything now that would suddenly repair the years of excuses. Dad didn't call. Instead, he sent a single text. We're taking care of the loan. I'm sorry. It wasn't a full apology, not even close, but it was an admission. And for him, that was monumental. What surprised me most was the message from Aaron. No theatrics. No blame. Just simple honesty. I'm sorry for staying silent. I should have spoken up. You didn't deserve any of this. He was right. But the tragedy was that he was the only one who realized it without being confronted. Meanwhile, Elena retreated into the quiet she always feared. Her constant updates about treatments disappeared. The curated photos stopped. The motivational quotes about trusting the journey vanished. Her world, once polished to perfection, was finally cracking publicly. Mom became quieter, too, careful with her words, hesitant in a way I had never seen. She wasn't used to facing consequences. She wasn't used to anyone challenging her belief that sacrifices were just family decisions. As for me? I moved. A small apartment near downtown, not fancy, barely furnished, with floors that creaked at night and walls thin enough to hear my neighbor's late-night TV habits. But the sunlight that streamed across the bed each morning felt like something sacred. I bought a used desk off a community marketplace, set it by the window, and spent nights writing my college application essays. Real ones. Honest ones. About growing up in the background. About claiming my future with my own hands. The ache was still there, buried under layers of hurt and realization. But it had shifted. It wasn't the suffocating ache of betrayal anymore. It was the ache of healing, raw but honest. One night, Jade dropped by with takeout and sat cross-legged on my floor. "You look lighter," she said simply. "I feel lighter," I admitted. For the first time, it was true. But the biggest change wasn't the silence from my family, it was the message that arrived the night before my first application was due. The night before my first college application was due, I sat at my little second-hand desk, reviewing my essay for what felt like the 100th time. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned. Outside, the city hummed faintly, reminding me I wasn't alone anymore, not in the way that used to hurt. I was about to close my laptop when my phone buzzed. A message. From an unexpected name. Mom. For a moment, my heartbeat stumbled. I considered letting it sit unread, the way I had with her last attempts. But something inside me, curiosity, closure, maybe both, made me open it. The message wasn't long. "I don't know how we got here. I'm sorry for the things we didn't see. I hope you're okay." Not an explanation. Not accountability. Not the truth. Just an echo of guilt trying to soften itself. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because I finally understood something. Closure doesn't always arrive from the person who hurt you. Sometimes it comes from choosing not to reopen the door. Instead, I closed the message and returned to my essay. I read the final line again, the one that had taken me hours to write. "I'm not rebuilding from nothing. I'm rebuilding from clarity." I hit submit. A soft rush filled my chest. Relief. Pride. A sense of direction that no longer felt borrowed from someone else's expectations. I closed my laptop and leaned back, the ceiling above me shifting between shadow and streetlight as I breathed in slowly. Later that night, someone knocked on my apartment door. 3 soft taps. 3 days after submitting my applications, I woke up to sunlight warming the edge of my pillow. For once, the morning felt peaceful, no buzzing anxiety, no replaying old arguments, no dread of what I'd find in my inbox. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and let it boot slowly. I wasn't expecting anything. Not yet. Admissions took weeks. But there it was, a bold, unread message at the top of my email list. Application update from Redbrook University. My stomach tightened. I clicked it before I could second-guess myself. As the page loaded, my hands trembled, not with fear this time, but with a strange, rising hope that felt almost foreign. Then the words appeared. "Congratulations, Camila. You've been accepted." I exhaled so sharply I almost laughed. A sound escaped me, half sob, half smile, as I pressed my hand against my mouth, staring at the screen like it might vanish. Accepted. Into a program I'd once believed was out of reach. Into a future they tried to take away before it even began. I sat down slowly, letting the reality settle into my bones. I wasn't stepping into a life built from scraps. I wasn't clawing for a place at someone else's table. I was walking into a future I had rebuilt myself, one decision at a time. Jade burst into my apartment later that day, breathless with excitement. "You did it," she shouted before I could even speak. We celebrated in the only way we knew how, cheap pizza, loud music, and dancing around my tiny living room like kids who'd just gotten away with something. That night, when everything quieted again, I opened my phone. A few more messages from Mom. One unread voicemail from Elena. A simple good luck from Dad. I stopped scrolling. Their voices, once so powerful, now felt distant, as if they lived in a chapter I'd outgrown. I didn't delete the messages. I didn't reply either. Healing doesn't require burning every bridge. It just requires not walking back to the ones that lead nowhere. As I stood by my window, watching the glow of the city pulse against the night sky, a realization washed over me. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way I had been. The wound was still tender, yes, but it was mending in the right direction, pulled together by truth and boundaries I'd finally learned to draw. My story wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about reclaiming a life that should have been mine all along. I used to think refund meant demanding what was taken. Now I understand. My refund was the future I chose for myself. Not in dollars, but in dignity, independence, and the courage to walk forward alone. And if someone listening to this has ever had to fight for their own future too, then you already know. Sometimes choosing yourself is the most powerful story of all.